Hi, my name is Jody Guerra with Excelsior Classes, and welcome to Book Banter, a video blog or vlog in which we tell you what you should be reading next. And our topic this week is Charles Dickens. Woo! That great Victorian British author. I love him. I know a lot of people are frustrated when they try to read him because they feel he's verbose. He has these outlandish, crazy characters, and the language is a bit complicated, but I'm telling you, there isn't anybody that can spin a better yarn than Charles Dickens. So when I first started teaching back in the late 80s, one of the required readings for ninth grade or freshman English was Great Expectations, and that was a difficult read. Most students hated it. They didn't enjoy it, but I really think it's because the language is somewhat removed. The works are pretty long, but let's talk about some of my favorites and see if we can't find some things that are great for students and for adults and are awesome read-alouds. And the first one that I just absolutely adore is this one, A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. It's a pretty thick book, and Oprah had it as one of her, book of the quarter or book of the month things that she had done back in, I think, about 7 years ago. This is the tale of Sidney, and he's just this delightful person somewhat who ends up, I don't want to do any spoilers, but it takes place in France, in Paris during the time of the Revolution, the French Revolution, as well as in London, and it's a story about sacrificial love. That's all I'm going to say about it because I don't want to give away the plot twist. And it's very hard to talk about Charles Dickens and not give away the plot twists. But it's a wonderful story with a great Christian morals. It's just lovely and delightful. Okay, another one. And this is, again, a pretty thick book. See, it's a really thick book. And it makes an absolutely wonderful read aloud. But it's the tale of David Copperfield. And I just think this is a great read aloud. You know, David is having to work in a warehouse. Sounds somewhat familiar, doesn't it? Probably a bit autobiographical there for Charles Dickens. The cast of characters is exciting. We've got Mr. Micawber, Betsy Trotwood, the horrible Uriah Heep. I mean, these are just awesome characters. It's a great read aloud. And I think it's a fairly straightforward read. And so if you have students that are, maybe having to read Great Expectations and they're having difficulty and you have the ability to switch it up, maybe try that particular one. I think it's great. Now, one that I've recently read is this. It's The Mystery of Edwin Drood. And this was authored by Charles Dickens. It's his final book, and it was left unfinished when Charles Dickens died in 1870. And so scholars love to talk about this book and kind of think about, well, who is the person that has killed Edwin Drood? Some say, oh, it's really not that much of a mystery. This is more of a morality tale and a cautionary tale. But others think, well, perhaps it is actually a mystery. But again, the characters are phenomenal. There's some new dynamics kind of going on in terms of the a couple of children who come. They are from a foreign territory of the British Empire. And so we've got just a wider cast of characters. The town that this is based in is actually, they call it Cloisterham, but it's really Rochester, which is where Charles Dickens lived with his family after he left London. And let me tell you, there probably isn't anybody more interesting than Charles Dickens himself. And so I have a couple of biographies that I just think are wonderful biographies. And one is this one. And look how slim this volume is. It's a very slim volume. It's a quick read. And it's just called Charles Dickens. This is part of the Penguin Lives series. And the Penguin Lives series is published by Penguin Books. What they do is they pair a rather well-known author, a rather famous author who may have some form of affinity for this particular biographical subject matter. So there are books on Sitting Bull, on Mozart, on authors, on architects, Frank Lloyd Wright. But this one is on Charles Dickens, and it's written by the wonderfully delightful Pulitzer Prize-winning author Jane Smiley, who writes. Her writing is like butter, and this is a very thin book, so you can, really, it's only it's less than 200 pages long. I mean, well, it's about 204. So it's just a delightful read, and you learn all about Charles Dickens, who really, in some ways, was a wonderful person, and in some ways was really not. But one of the things that I always remember about Charles Dickens is that he was a great walker. He loved to walk. He loved to walk, and would sometimes walk upwards of 15 miles per day. 15 miles, I can't imagine. This was on a regular, daily, every other day basis. So just prodigious energy. The guy had a tremendous amount of energy. Another book that I've read, this has been in the last 2 months, is by Robert Gottlieb. And it is called Great Expectations. And the subtitle is The Sons and Daughters of Charles Dickens. So this is really somewhat of a biography of Charles Dickens, but it's really looking at the children of Charles Dickens. And he had a lot of children, a lot. Some only, I believe, one died at a very young age. But these are the stories of his children. And the way that Gottlieb divides the book, it has part 1 and part 2. And so it goes through all of the children from Charlie all the way through Plorn, who was basically the youngest, and tells the story of them while Dickens was alive. And then part 2 is what happens to them after Dickens passes away. And so there's a great deal of drama among the siblings, just their interactions with Charles Dickens and his estranged wife, and just the cast of characters of people and other personalities in Victorian London or Victorian England that Dickens associated with. And so it's a very interesting read, just a different perspective. And I have a couple more. It's about to be Christmas time, at least when I'm recording this. And so all of you are well acquainted probably with the Christmas stories of Charles Dickens. This one is A Christmas Carol, and there are a few other Christmas stories that they have cultivated. This is a Signet Classic book, but so it contains A Christmas Carol. If you haven't read it, it is a wonderful read. But they've also cultivated a few of the Christmas scenes from the other works of Charles Dickens. And that's kind of an exciting thing to read. Dickens had a great number of Christmas tales and Christmas books that he published. One was called The Chimes. Another one was called The Cricket on the Hearth. The Haunted Man is another. So, I mean, he just was a person that was really enthusiastic about Christmas. And these make great reads. And finally, this is a book, and you can probably tell from the tattered and torn dust jacket. This is my final kind of favorite recommendation. It's called The Year of Our Lord, or The Life of Our Lord. I apologize. The Life of Our Lord. It's by Charles Dickens. And this particular book, it was published. It was actually withheld by the family. It was in the possession of his sister-in-law, Georgina, and came in then from Georgina, went to his son, Sir Henry Dickens. And then Sir Henry did not wish it to be published during his lifetime, but after he was deceased, this book was finally published in 1934. And it's a telling of the gospel message by Charles Dickens. And there's the version that I have is a lovely little book with some pictures of roses and flowers all throughout. It's a beautiful little story, and I just love the fact that Dickens would tell his own children the gospel story frequently, at least according to his children. And so no matter, the decisions in his life and some of the things he had going on, certainly he wanted his children to know about Jesus and his sacrificial love for all of us. So anyway, I hope that some of these are some good stories, ideas for you to pick up. And if you happen to have a favorite Dickens story that I did mention, maybe you could note it in the comments or let me know which of these books you've decided to read. Until next time, Happy reading.